Hi, everyone. How's everything going tonight? This is, aside from my complete breakdown of astrotheology in the Bible and in all the holy texts from 6,000 years ago to now that I recently did, which is still getting a ton of views. This is probably the second, if not the first, most important video that I'm going to do. Now, I did this maybe a year and a half ago, but I have so many new subscribers right now, and a lot of you, for whatever reason, don't go through the history of the channel. Some of you do, but not a lot of you do, and not see this. So I wanted this to get out. I wanted to explain this, what God is. It's actually not a hard concept to understand the infinite. It's truly not. However, that being said, I want you to know that the problem and the basis of all religion is, aside from the fact that people are spoon fed it from the moment they're born, and they grow up with it, and it's constantly reinforced, and people are constantly afraid of upsetting God or walking out of line or not following these holy texts literally. For the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims, if they understood this video, everything would be so much different in the world. Because what religion does is it preys on your fear of death. And more so than death, it's not even really death. It's either eternal punishment after death or non existence after death, both of which are not true. Now, I've gone over the eternal punishment in my other video, but let's go over non existence and everything. So, I'm going to present this. Remember, I did this video about a year and a half ago, but I'm going to do this again. So let me just share my screen, and we're going to talk about what God is. So let me just make sure y'all can see it. Beautiful. Okay, so here we go. This is what is God. And remember, people are terrified of death and non-existence. This is why most people just live simple lives and they have children, because children are your bloodline. They are your legacy. But if people don't do that, they wonder what's going to happen, who's going to remember them. But we're going to go over all this, right? So what is God? Now, the first thing I'm going to share with you, if any of you guys have read my book series, this is from my first book that I wrote when I was 28, 29. It didn't get published until 2019 because it took me forever to get a book deal. However, this is from my first book that I wrote when I was 28. This is from Into the Rabbit Hole, Beneath the Veil. Scientists have determined through completion of the Genome Project that humans are roughly 99.7% identical DNA-wise. Two penguins are more genetically different than you and I are. Whomever finds this, I want you to try this experiment. Write down your name. Write your name down. Write down your two parents' names down above yours. Now you have 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, and you go on. Let's go back 35 generations. It roughly takes you back to the year 840 AD. You will have 137 billion, that's with a B, billion people. The number of ancestors list reminds me of the story of the servant summoned by the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was pleased with how the servant was doing and wanted to reward him. Serving you is all I desire, sir, the servant insisted. No, I insist that you ask for something, anything you desire, the Pharaoh said back. And basically, this went on back and forth until the Pharaoh eventually got angry and threatened punishment. After thinking long and hard, the servant, seeing a chessboard in front of him, said, on day 1, I want 1 piece of rice. On the second day, I want 2. Each day you will double the previous days until this chessboard is complete. I will place a grain on each square representing each day completed. The first day, the Pharaoh sent his finest servant in a parade with a golden pouch to deliver the grain. The amount grew exponentially, and halfway through the board, there was no more grain in the land. The Pharaoh summoned the servant back. Your Highness, all I ever wanted to do was serve you, replied the servant. The servant, although now the wealthiest man in all the land, had retained his hubris. It was there that the Pharaoh learned not to question humility or assume that giving material gifts as tokens of appreciation were all that mattered. As for the servant, he continued to work for the Pharaoh. However, he had taken all the rice and continued to feed all the poor and the homeless people until the day of his death. The point of both of these stories is that it's simple math. In fact, it's how cells divide in your body and mass produce. The reason I stopped at this particular time frame, 840 AD, is because it's roughly how many people it's been calculated that have ever lived on planet Earth. 140 billion people. Remember, we stopped at 137 billion people. So that's as close as it gets. Even if we take the Bible literally, we still need to get to October 23rd, 4004 BC. We're in a bit of a pickle here. There needs to be a way to bridge the gap, and this is where the pedigree collapse theory comes in. The concept states that there is no other explanation other than a whole lot of incest. Sometimes, like in the case of the Kentucky Blue people, there are no branches on the family tree. Sometimes, like in the banking or royal families, it is to preserve money, or as they like to call it, special genetics. Based on our DNA, geneticists say that the farthest point one person can be on this planet from another is 50th cousins. So when you've got like Brad Pitt on the left and you've got like an Aborigine all the way in Australia on the right, they cannot be further than 50th cousins apart. So this actually ties in, pause from this sec, this actually ties into the whole all the presidents are related to one another. Well, of course they are. We all are. Because what does it all mean? Well, in a nutshell, it means that far back we are all related and all one, and we should start to act like it. Let's explore different cognitive viewpoints. How about from a creationist then? Well, we all came from Adam and Eve. Technically, Eve from Adam's rib, and even more technically, Adam was made from mud and dirt from the world God created. How about from an evolutionist then? Okay, let's start with the Big Bang. Let alone the fact that all the material we are came from an infinitesimally dense singularity, and no one seems to want to explain where that singularity came from, but we'll let that slide. We were all one at one point. How about the idea of source energy? If our souls are like crumbs off a cookie, the cookie being source, God, whatever you want to call it, then we are all connected multidimensionally, and upon death, it will be a vibrational change of frequency back to it. Let's try one last one. Aliens placing us here. You would still have to account for the first humans and how we all came about. You don't just magically have a species, poof, we're here. Or do you? If so, who created the first test group of people? Secondly, what about the first spirit consciousness of DNA that evolved this level of higher thinking? There's a big difference between what I am writing and a monkey who's fed up with people taking pictures of him and throwing his shit at them. Still, though, the point is that at some point, things had to come back to a singularity in the sense of one source of point. Humans are so quick to think of the end of the world, things ending, but what they can't do is think about the beginning or if there was something before a beginning. So, this was my first book. At this point, it was written 12 years ago. It was so close to the ultimate truth. First, we need to define God. We need to prove an existence of God, of a creator. Well, in astrology, you know that the sun tells the hour of the day, the moon tells the day of the month, and the zodiac tells the month of the year. Where we're located in a corner of the Milky Way galaxy, in the middle of nowhere. It's not significant. It's not the center point of anything. Where we're just randomly located, there is a perfect celestial clock that all the ancients seemed to think it was so important that every single ancient holy text had encoded the information from it into it. So this points to a creator that created a perfect calendar for us. So that proves that they are God. However, also, the fact that DNA is a computer blueprint for life and we have a perfect calendar in the heavens in the middle of nowhere in the Milky Way galaxy, there's a perfect calendar for us to figure out. These are fingerprints of God. So now we've defined God as existing. But where is God? Well, it must be beyond space and time, beyond the 11 dimensions of string theory. Ask any religious person to define God, and they'll tell you he's omnipotent, omniscient, all-knowing, all-wise, all-powerful, infinite. They'll list a bunch of things. The second they say infinite, this is where you have them. God is infinite. How can something exist outside of infinity? Explain that. How can it? It can't. The biggest lie we've been taught is that we are separate from God, that we should fear it, that we are separate from it. We are a part of it. Many of you have children. They are literally half your DNA, so they are a part of you, but you experience them subjectively outside your body. So is with God and us. A piece of God comes down in what we call consciousness. into a body and we feel separate from it. We are all God experiencing itself subjectively. If you are infinite and everything, nothing can exist outside of you, not space or time. So what do you do if you're everything? If you're literally everything, what are you going to do? You're going to talk to someone? You're going to read a book and learn something new? No, you're everything. So what do? The only way that we can describe humanity, our planet's existence, and how we are here is that a piece of God comes down and tricks itself into thinking you're not God by wiping your mind before you come to this planet, and you experience yourself subjectively and objectively, right? You're different than me, I'm different than you, but we're all part of the same thing. We are a species with amnesia living in a simulation. Einstein said about God that he believes in the God of Spinoza. Baruch Spinoza was a thinker who said that God doesn't want you huddled in churches and temples in the cold, praying as loud as you can with others, praying the loudest. Jesus said that those who give for publicity or pray the loudest, they have their reward. And what that basically means, guys, is that if you're doing something or you're giving charity for attention and you're on camera and you're showing everybody and you're doing this, that, and the other thing, well, that is your reward, is the attention, the adulation. You're not doing it for the right thing. If you pray by yourself. Spinoza's God wants you to go in the mountains and the lake and enjoy what I am created for you and worship that way. See, here's the thing about I am. It is the only words that can describe the infinite, God. Where did you come from? Who made you? Where did God come from? I am. I exist. I exist. That's all that matters. Enjoy what I am created for you and worship that way. The biggest lie we have ever been collectively taught is that we need to fear and worship. This is what the religious prey on. When we are a baby, we are in a mother's womb. The mother, being the supreme being, is aware of the baby. However, the baby is not aware about the mother from its vantage point. Think about it. As is with us with God. We are each a piece of God, unaware of the whole because we're in the middle of it. Don't take my word for it, though. You guys like Alan Watts? Jesus Christ knew he was God. So wake up and find out eventually who you really are. In our culture, of course, they'll say you're crazy and you're blasphemous, and they'll either put you in jail or in a nut house, which is pretty much the same thing. However, if you wake up in India and you tell your friends and relations, my goodness, I've just discovered that I'm God, they'll laugh and say, oh, congratulations, at last you found out. How about Nargis Allegria? To become absolute, you have to accept that you are God. There is only God. You have to admit that others are gods too. But if your love does not stretch that far and you are blinded by your shadow, don't complain that liberation did not happen yet. Why should freedom reveal itself to someone who refuses to embody love? When you are ready to perceive God in everything, you have opened a gate that opens the possibility of being eaten raw by the absolute. P.S. Everything you hate is God, because there is only God. Anything you think should not be happening is God, because there is only God. Realize there only being God, and it will prevail first in your experience and then in the collective. The religious will have none of this. The religious will tell you that when you die, you are going to stand in front of God and be judged through your entire life. You will sit through judgment. And that's just not the case. We're already a part of God. If God is infinite, how are you going to stand beside something that you're already a part of? That's not how this works. And the religious will not tell you that, even the evil people and the negative people, because evil is a free will choice on this planet. They will not tell you that things that are evil are also God, but the Bible does. Isaiah 45:7. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. They're trying to tell you this. Now, a lot of people are going to say, this is taken out of context, right? With all the apologetics that the religious are going to put. And I'm sure they're not going to like this video at all, but I really couldn't give a shit. They tell you in Isaiah 45:7, the good and the evil. It's always going to be a part of this planet. Earth is a free will zone. That's why it's visited so much, because people have free will. They don't have free will in other realms. Everything in existence is a part of God. The good, the bad, all of it. Religious people can't admit that they are God. Only Jesus and God are God. But how can something exist outside the infinite? String theory used to be the most cutting-edge quantum physics, and it talks about 11 dimensions to make it work. Now, the most cutting-edge quantum physics states that the universe is conscious. Welcome to the party. Incidentally, Hermes talks about string theory and the quantum hermetica 6,000 years ago. The third hermetic principle is the principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything vibrates. And hello, that's what string theory figured out, that everything is made up of tiny little strings, microscopic to the Planck level, and basically everything vibrates in a certain way, and it gives it its properties, its color, its taste, its sight, everything. Your God experiencing itself subjectively through amnesia. The Book of Thomas saying 77. Split a piece of wood and I am there. Raise up a stone and you will find me. God is everything. The wood, the stone, this now makes sense. In the Quran 532. That is why we decreed for the children of Israel that whoever kills a soul without it being guilty of manslaughter or corruption on the earth is as though he has killed all mankind. And whoever saves a life is as though he has saved all mankind. See? We are all one. We are all God. And this makes sense now too. Matthew 25:40. Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. We are all one. This makes sense now. We are all God. Therefore, we are infinite and eternal. When you realize you are eternal and you are God, just as the enlightened have realized in the past, this is what Buddha figured out under the fig tree. This is what Vishnu tried to teach you. This is what all of them have tried to teach you along the way. Just as the enlightened have realized in the past, you get filled with love and you see people and the world differently. You no longer fear death and you're driven to love one another, not because of fear and punishment like the religious. The biggest mystery of life is sitting in front of you in plain sight. The religious texts allude to it, but they never come out and say it. You also have to understand this. This is very important, guys. When you come to this realization that you are infinite, that you are eternal, that you are loved, that you will not be punished, that there is nothing to fear, and that you will continue. First law of thermodynamics, right? Or if you ever want to read something called You Want a Physicist to Speak at Your Funeral by Freeman. Read that. You also have to understand that when you come to this realization, that feeling you get is the exact same emotional feeling that religious people get when they become saved. Only they are ruled by fear because now they're part of the kingdom of heaven, but they don't ever want to lose it. This is why it's so hard for them to let go of the holy books as literal texts. And that is what I wanted to share with you guys. I wanted you guys to understand that we are all part of the infinite. We are all part of the infinite. We are all loved eternally. And there is nothing to fear. Imagine if a baby being brought into this world as it grows up is taught that it is a part of God, it is infinite, and it has nothing to worry, and to choose love over fear. Imagine if that was the message, instead of all this religious bullshit from every aspect. Imagine knowing from a young age that you're eternal. Imagine knowing that there is nothing to worry about. There is nothing to fear. That you just have to deal with your soul's evolution on this planet. And you will deal with the good and the bad, of course, because there will always be evil because we're a free will zone. But imagine for a second that instead of being taught fear, you're taught love. We are all infinite, guys. I'm a part of all of you as you are a part of all of me. And I'm here just to ease people's fear from religion. That's what my purpose is. Incidentally, the meaning of life is, as Picasso said, the meaning of life is to find your gift. And the purpose of life is to give it away. And it's really that simple, guys.